Once upon a time, in a bustling German town called Mainz, there lived a clever and curious boy named Johann Gutenberg. Johann was always full of ideas and dreams, and his favorite pastime was reading. He would spend hours in his family's library, poring over the few handwritten books they owned. But Johann had a secret wish. He wanted everyone in the world to have access to books and knowledge, not just the wealthy or the scholars. One sunny afternoon, as Johann was playing in the town square, he overheard an old storyteller sharing tales with a group of children. The storyteller's voice was filled with magic as he described far-off lands, brave knights, and wise wizards. Johann's eyes sparkled with excitement, and he decided to approach the storyteller. "Excuse me, sir," Johann said politely. "Your stories are wonderful. How do you remember all these tales?" The old storyteller, with a twinkle in his eye, replied, "Ah, young one, I have learned these stories from many books and wise people over the years. But it's not just about remembering. It's about sharing them with others. That is the true magic." Johann nodded thoughtfully and ran back home, his mind buzzing with new ideas. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought about how wonderful it would be if everyone could read these stories. Suddenly, an idea struck him like a bolt of lightning. "I must find a way to make more books," Johann exclaimed to himself. The next morning, Johann hurried to his father's workshop. His father was a skilled goldsmith, and their house was filled with tools and shiny metal objects. Johann found his father, Herr Gutenberg, working on a delicate piece of jewelry. "Father, I have an idea," Johann began eagerly. "What if we could make books faster and more easily so everyone could have them?" Herr Gutenberg looked at his son with a mixture of pride and curiosity. "That's a noble idea, Johann, but making books is a long and tedious process. They are all handwritten, and it takes many months to create just one." "I know, father," Johann replied, "but what if we could invent a machine that could print words on paper, like the way you press designs onto gold?" Herr Gutenberg paused and thought for a moment. "It's an interesting idea, Johann, but it would require a lot of hard work and experimentation." Undeterred, Johann spent the next few years studying everything he could about printing and machinery. He traveled to different towns and learned from skilled craftsmen. One day, while working in his father's workshop, Johann had a breakthrough. "I've got it," he shouted, startling his father. "We can use movable type. Small pieces of metal with letters carved into them. We can arrange them to form words and then press them onto paper." Herr Gutenberg smiled at his son's enthusiasm. "That sounds promising, Johann. Let's try it." For many months, Johann and his father worked tirelessly, designing and building their printing press. They faced many challenges and setbacks, but Johann's determination never wavered. Finally, one crisp autumn morning, they were ready to test their invention. "Let's print a page," Johann said, his hands trembling with excitement. They carefully placed the inked type onto the press, laid a sheet of paper over it, and pulled the heavy lever. Johann's heart pounded as he lifted the paper to reveal the printed words. "It works," he exclaimed. "Father, it works. We've done it." Herr Gutenberg hugged his son tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Johann. You've invented something that will change the world." News of Johann's invention spread quickly throughout Mainz and beyond. People marveled at the possibility of having more books and sharing knowledge with others. Johann knew that this was just the beginning of his journey, but he was filled with hope and excitement for the future. And so, Johann Gutenberg's dream of making books accessible to everyone began to come true. Little did he know, his invention would transform the world and usher in a new era of learning and discovery. The excitement in Mainz was palpable as Johann and his father continued to refine their invention. People from all over the town gathered outside their workshop, eager to catch a glimpse of the magical machine that could print books. Johann and Herr Gutenberg decided it was time to demonstrate the full potential of their printing press. One bright morning, they invited the townspeople to the square. A large table was set up with their printing press on display, and Johann stood beside it, ready to explain how it worked. "Ladies and gentlemen," Johann began, his voice filled with excitement, Today, we will show you how this marvelous machine can create books quickly and efficiently. The crowd murmured with anticipation as Johann carefully placed the movable type on the press. He arranged the letters to form a page from a popular storybook. Once everything was in place, he inked the type and laid a blank sheet of paper over it. With a deep breath, Johann pulled the lever and the press worked its magic. "Look," Johann said, holding up the freshly printed page. "With this machine, we can produce hundreds of pages in the time it takes to write just one by hand." The townspeople gasped in amazement. One of the children in the front row, a little girl named Greta, raised her hand. "Can I try, Mr. Johann?" she asked shyly. Johann smiled warmly. "Of course, Greta. Come up here and I'll show you how." Greta climbed onto the platform, her eyes wide with wonder. Johann guided her tiny hands to the lever and helped her press it down. Together, they lifted the paper to reveal another printed page. "You did it, Greta," Johann cheered. "See how easy it is?" Greta beamed with pride, and the crowd erupted into applause. As more people took turns trying the press, Johann noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was his old friend, Hans, a scholar who loved books as much as Johann did. "Johann, this is incredible," Hans exclaimed, stepping forward. "Think of the knowledge we can share with the world. We could print scientific texts, literature, and even maps." "Exactly, Hans," Johann replied. "With this press, we can spread knowledge far and wide. No longer will books be a luxury only for the rich." Hans looked thoughtful for a moment. "You know, Johann, there's a book I've always wanted to share with others. It's an ancient text filled with wisdom and stories from long ago." "Bring it to me," Johann said. "We will print it and make sure everyone can read it." Hans hurried home and returned with a worn, handwritten manuscript. Johann carefully examined the pages and began setting the type. As he worked, he explained to the crowd how the movable type could be rearranged to print different texts. "Each of these little metal pieces has a letter carved into it," Johann said, holding up a piece of type for everyone to see. "By arranging them in the correct order, we can print any book, any story." The crowd watched in awe as Johann and his father printed page after page of the ancient text. When they had finished, Johann held up the first printed book. "Ladies and gentlemen," Johann announced, "this is just the beginning. With this printing press, we can create countless books and share knowledge with everyone." The townspeople cheered, and Johann felt a surge of pride and joy. He knew that his invention would change the world, bringing learning and stories to people far and wide. As the sun set over Mainz, Johann looked at his father and smiled. "We've done it, Father. We've truly created something magical." Herr Gutenberg placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Yes, Johann, and this is only the beginning. Just imagine the future we can build together." And so, Johann Gutenberg's printing press became a beacon of hope and knowledge, spreading stories and wisdom to every corner of the world. Little did Johann know, his invention would inspire countless others to dream, create, and share their own stories.